For Helen Metella, finding ways to connect with her mother became more difficult as dementia progressed. The Edmonton author noticed that children's picture books helped keep her mother engaged, but something was missing. The stories weren't written for adults, and the characters didn't reflect the life experiences of someone who had raised a family, worked, and lived through decades of memories. So Helen created her own. Inspired by her mother's real life adventures as a busy mother of five, the book uses nostalgic illustrations and simple storytelling to spark conversation and memories. Helen says the book isn't just for people living with dementia. It can also help family members, caregivers, and grandchildren, and even English language learners. In this interview, she explains how one simple picture book became a powerful tool for preserving dignity and helping families stay connected.
My mom is 86, and for the past 3 years, she's been living with advancing dementia. Started very mild, went into the middle sections without too many problems. I was doing things with her, like taking her to picnics and, outdoor events and concerts. Then I was reading with her, and as her dementia advanced, I noticed that she wasn't able to concentrate as well on the things I was reading. So newspaper stories, the Globe and Mail Saturday section, chapters from books, she couldn't do that. And I thought, well, how can I connect with her? A lot of the things that she used to do, I couldn't do anymore. We couldn't go out to concerts and theater. I saw her one day, the staff had given her a children's book, and I thought, that is a little weird. But when I started to think about it, I realized that it was very simple. The pictures were engaging, and even if she wasn't reading it aloud to herself, she was still engrossed. So I bought her a bunch of picture books, of children's picture books, which I curated because some are absolutely not appropriate. But even after 30 or 40 books, I realized, there's something missing here. These books are meant for children. They are there to teach children lessons, to guide them, to counsel them, advise them. And I would have to put my hand over the front where it said for ages 5 to 9 or something, right? Because my mom can still read. And I thought, well, why is there not a book where the adult is the main character? I looked and couldn't find it. And as is true of most inventions, when you can't find what you need, you invent it yourself. So I'm a former journalist. I've written lots. I've worked in radio, but I've also worked in television. So I know about dialogue. I know about scenes. I know how you construct a story. So it's got an antagonist and a protagonist and, reversals and all of that. And then I thought, well, what am I going to write about? And I thought about the numerous things, the adventures my mom had when she was basically a single mom. She had a husband, but she was doing a lot of things for 5 children in the 60s and 70s when she was also a working mom. It was the 70s, so Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem were out, and she had a subscription to Ms. Magazine. She's a very independent woman, and also quite young. She had babies when she was very, very young. By the time she was 24, she had all 5 of us. So she was pretty, and she used that to her advantage when she went to an auction one day and wanted to get not just one item, but 2 items from somebody who was buying up everything. So that's essentially the story of Marika and the auction and how it came to be.
That's incredible how you were able to use her stories that you told her. Did she tell you that story like many years ago or?
Yeah, many times. It's almost family lore. So in my kitchen, I have a glass cupboard. It's got a set of crystal, beautiful set. I think it's one of the most expensive kinds of crystal you can buy. Very thin, tings like a bell when you hit it. But it's missing a few pieces. And we have a lovely china set, which of course these days nobody cares. Shabby chic is in, right? But in the 60s and 70s, it was super important that everything matched. And the story of how she got that, how she went to an auction with her 2 little boys, who my youngest brothers are only a year apart and they're almost like twins. They were about 4 or 5 at the time. Of course, it's not a place for kids, an auction. And there was somebody buying up all this stuff. My mom was hoping that, he would let her have some of these pieces that she really wanted. She didn't want the billiard table or the piano or the art. She wanted these pieces. So she had to confront him. She used her, independent spirit. She used the children a little bit as a bait, and there's a bit of a twist at the end. All came together. Most of the story is true. I embellished a bit. with apologies to my brothers. I turn them into mini terrorists for the purpose of the story. But most of it is a true story, yes.
What was your mom's reaction when she read and saw the book?
So she's different on every day, as most people are who have dementia. Some days she understands that it is a story that she lived. Other days I have to prompt her. Some days she just giggles at in the moment how preposterous and silly this story is, but she loves it. I mean, she reads it. She can actually still form letters into words and read really well. I don't know if she understands what she's reading. Sometimes she'll read a whole page and she'll go back to the top of the page and read it, but she's engrossed by it. And I was very fortunate in that I have an illustrator who did not grow up in the 70s or 60s. But when I described to her what I wanted, she put in all kinds of little Easter eggs, details of that era. And so I can point those out to my mother. And that is the premise of this book. When you go to visit someone who's got dementia, what do you talk about? You know, they can't answer you most of the time. You have got to carry the conversation. And so when I read the book to her, I can stop at any point and go off on a little side story. Oh, look at this starburst clock that we had in our kitchen. Blah, 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 blah. I remember something about the kitchen. Look at this corduroy couch or this harvest gold fridge. And she, you know, she'll get a twinkle in her eye and she'll giggle. Again, it depends on the day how much she is actually remembering and how much she's enjoying the moment. But it fills up an entire visit to go and read her a book. And I can do it over and over again. I can read the same book. I mean, I've got lots of books for her, but that's what I wanted with this book was a book in which the adult is the main character, the children are the supporting cast. It's something that they might, adults of her age, might have had happen to them, or they can recognize it. And it might evoke memories for people who can still express memories. But even if they can't say them out loud, I think they can internalize it. So it's got a whole range of ways to use. And if you will permit me, when I was promoting this book the last couple of weeks, I ran into people who said, you know what, this would be perfect as an ESL tool because adults don't want to read children's books, even if they're learning how to speak English. Also, a really good tool for adults who are learning to read, whose literacy skills aren't great, and they're learning to read at an adult age. Great book for them, too, because it's not about children.
Those are all great points. There's a few that I want to pick apart at there. One was that, yeah, anyone who's gone to visit someone that has dementia, and you're looking for things to say, right? And I think that's a big part of it too. Like you can only talk about, well, I went to work, I did this, and or so many times, right?
That's right. I used to write down, anecdotes that happened to me during the week so that I would have a bunch of things to say. My sister sent jokes of the day, but again, there's only so many times you can do that. So this is a way to overcome that problem. The other problem is, say you have a grandchild or the person who's living with dementia has a grandchild. Really hard for you to bring in a young person to a long-term care home, sit them down with somebody and have a conversation ensue. But this book is written in in simple language, so anybody who's learning to read, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, could sit down and read the book to their older relative. Therefore, they've made a connection. They may have a memory of doing this, and there's no expectation on the part of the person with dementia to say anything. They can just enjoy the story. And that's a really big part of it. If you have somebody with dementia in your life, you know the number one thing you're told not to do is ask them questions because their brain is going slowly. Hard for them to think of the words, think of what they want to say, make the word. This takes away that expectation. You can read it to them. Occasionally, they might remark something back to you, but they don't have to.
Wow, I wish I would have had this knowledge back when my father was in a continuing care home. When my kids were little, I had a 2-year-old at the time, and as much as the other people in the home enjoyed seeing, this 2-year-old in the home too.
Yeah.
There was some times where it would have been nice to have something that we could have had,
To
together,
interact.
right? That's
Absolutely.
that's that's
Yeah.
huge. What is it about picture books that work so well for some people living with dementia?
Well, I just had a conversation with a brain researcher at the Baycrest Academy in Toronto who works in the field of dementia. And he said that images and things that you encountered early in your life are the ones that are the last to go because they made the most impression on you, right? And you've also had them throughout your life for 80 years or 60 years. And so images in a book can stir those up, right? You can not just look at the one image, but the stories that are happening off to the side of the page, the characters. Like it's not one dimensional the way it is when you just talk to somebody and tell them well, I suppose when you tell them a story, it can go off in different directions. But there is just so much richness in a picture that, I mean, little kids often stare at picture books for a long time too, trying to figure out the world, right? And in, I think, a senior's position, they are trying to make sense of the scenes that they're seeing and the memories that might be sparked. So I'll just get back to that professor for a minute, that brain researcher. He said to me, he'd never seen a book like this before. He wished that there had been something, couldn't understand why nobody had thought about it. But mostly, he said, all the concepts that I sort of intuitively figured out by living with someone who has dementia, he said they're scientifically and clinically supported as effective strategies for talking to somebody with dementia. And I went, well, that's great. It's from lived experience. I didn't go to school for this, but that's how I came around to it.
What do you wish more people understood about dementia now that you've been on that journey
Yeah.
for a number of years now?
Really good question. Because even you have to educate your family, right? Different family members. It is not a bad thing to go along with them and just whatever they say, that's fine. If they think that there's a farmer outside their window or, that there's I don't know whatever they see or think, it's fine. You're not lying to them. You're not fooling them. You're just engaging with them where they were. And I think that's one thing I wish people knew. I also think I want people to know that there is a person in there. They may not be able to talk to you, and I get emotional when I think about this. They had a life, they have memories, they can understand words. I think of it as somebody who might have been underwater or in a coma. You do not know what they can hear and what they understand. And so don't presume that you have to talk to them in this, what they call elder speak, this sort of baby language, or talk loud. Or, I mean, maybe if somebody is hard of hearing, you might have to raise your volume. But I wish people knew that that person is still there. They're just processing slowly, more slowly than you and I are doing. And they appreciate it, I think, when you talk to them just the way they were when you knew them, when all the faculties were intact. I really dislike when people suddenly think that this person is an invalid. They're not. They've just got a different processor working at a different speed.
The elder speak term that you mentioned, it reminds me of another issue where sometimes when that person either with varying forms of dementia is in the room and there's a doctor or whatever present, and sometimes we just talk to the doctor,
Yeah,
and then there's this third. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
I try really, really hard, and in fact, have had to correct different healthcare workers. Like in the early stages of my mom's dementia, she had to go to the emergency room numerous times. She broke an ankle, she broke her hip, and people would talk to me and say, well, it's her dementia that's making her not be able to. And I would say, she's sitting right here. She understands the word. Could you please be a little bit more circumspect? And they all understood immediately, but because they're healthcare workers and they deal with these words all the time, it didn't seem unusual to them. So I always insisted that we did not talk. And I always turned to my mom and say, and what do you think? And here's what I'm doing. I don't know if you've got time for this story, but in one occasion I came to her long-term care home We were going to do physio. She was watching TV. I thought, okay, we'll watch the rest of the show. We did, and I said, okay, Mom, as I'm undoing her wheelchair and unlocking, I said, now we're going to go downstairs for physio for a little bit, and I'll bring you back here later. Is that okay? I always say that. And she looked at me, and she hadn't said very much. She said, well, it's not okay, but I guess we're going to do it anyway. And it was like this person emerged again, and I thought, you know what? We can watch another episode of the television show you're watching before we go. Like, that respect is so important. I would want someone to respect me and not pretend that I'm not seeing and hearing what's going on.
So much of this wisdom are things that I would have known, like,
Mm-hmm.
almost 20 years ago when I was going through this. It's huge. It's about that respect, and it's about,
Yeah.
knowing that that person is still there
Yeah.
and still has thoughts. And
And I think, I mean, certainly in my case, I came to dementia not knowing anything. I didn't know that dementia was an umbrella term, that Alzheimer's was just one of many. I had to learn it because I'm a journalist, or was a journalist. I researched it, but that's not true of everybody. So um, I don't look down or frown upon people for not knowing it. Why would you learn about dementia if it wasn't affecting you, if it hadn't happened to you yet? There's a million other things to, your mortgage, your career, your kids. So I know that it's only when it's right in front of your face that it suddenly becomes something you have to learn. What I'm hoping to do is smooth the path for people so that they don't have to do this research, so that they hear an interview like this and go, oh, that kind of is where I'm at, or that's where my mom is at, was at last year, and now she's shifted. And they can just take the benefit of my experience.
speaking of your experience, is this the first time you've written a book?
Not quite. I
Okay.
wrote a book about right in the middle of the pandemic, so it didn't get very much promotion.
Mhm.
It was a much different book. It was a memoir of RCMP, an entire troop of RCMP officers that graduated in 1966, and where they all went in their various careers across Canada. So that was really fun. And of
Why did
course,
you do that?
it was an assignment at one point. It was somebody came to me and they said they wanted this so that their families knew what they had gone through, because these men were all celebrating. I think it was their 50th reunion at this point. And at their 30th reunion, a newspaper writer in Regina had done a few stories, and they decided they wanted to expand. So she was not able to finish the book, so some of her stories are in the book, and I co-wrote the rest of them, or I co-wrote the book by writing the rest of them. And then they decided to publish it, and it actually has made a lot of, well, we've won a few independent publishing awards. It's one of those things that, again, it's not something you commonly see out there.
Yeah.
Usually it's a memoir of one police officer and their various horrible experiences. This one had joys and also kind of dire stuff. And so with that publisher, it's a small publisher in Regina. It's called Your Nicholsworth Publishing. I had such a good experience that when I went to put this book out in the world, and I knew it would take 2 or 3 years at the minimum to get an agent, to get a traditional publisher involved, to convince somebody that there was this possibility for this book. I went back to this publisher and I said, let's put this out. And we got it out in 18 months from start to finish.
From the start of you actually writing
Yeah.
it?
Me sitting in a bathtub thinking of the idea. The biggest part, of course, was the illustrations. Those took a lot of time. And then all of the production work and the printing work. It was exactly 18 months. With the hope that people will, it's like proof of concept. If you think that this is a good idea, hey, I've got 2 more written already, and I'd like to also write 3 more that come from the male perspective, so from the father's perspective. Yeah,
So do
and
you have those
do I have
in your
which?
back pocket? Like you
I
have
do.
the
Yeah.
ideas?
Yeah. Oh, I have
Yeah.
I'm writing them right now. The
Okay.
men's stories I'm just starting, because I thought that most of the people statistically who are in care homes are female. I'm not sure if that's true. It seems to be anecdotally true. But when I started to go to care homes and read this one-to-one, I was amazed at how engaged the men were. Well, an auction, that's something a lot of men went to. There's a scene in the book where the father is fixing the car. He's under the car. Men were just, the same way as the women, except their side stories were about different things. And I thought, okay, that's an entire audience that also needs a book for them. And so I've got a couple of those stories on the go as well. So yeah, my hope is, Carolyn, that people will see this as a viable idea. And I would like to put 2 or 3 out at once so that it doesn't take me the rest of my life to put 6 books out.
Well, 18 months, though, that to me seems very quick to go
It
from
was.
start to finish to
It
having it in
was.
people's hands.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was. And it would
yeah.
have taken much longer to get an agent and then to sit in a slush pile and to maybe get a traditional publisher involved. I think now that I've got people testifying that it's really
Mhm.
helpful to them, it might be a little bit of an easier go. I sure hope so.
Yeah. Now it's a storybook. I guess is that easy to confuse with like a comic book? Is it
I don't think
necessarily they're
so.
going to be
No.
funny? Like, is that a
It
theme?
has humor in it. The pictures are whimsical. Have you seen the book? Because I have one
I
here. I can
have.
show it to you.
Yeah.
You have. So it's not like a manga, or I think that's the way you pronounce it, or a graphic novel at all.
Mhm.
It's more like, well, maybe you don't remember the Jetsons cartoon series.
Sure do.
So that's kind of where I was going. It was modern, people in the 60s and 70s. I've slid it over to the 70s. And if I write more, I might have to slide them into the 80s because people who are in homes are people who the most vibrant part of their life when they were in their 20s and 30s right now would be the 1970s. Anyway, what I've heard from people who remark on the illustrations is that Hannah Kate Miller, who is the illustrator, put energy into them. They feel like they move as opposed to being very one-dimensional. And I think that that's an accurate description of what she did,
And your next ones, the ones that you're still
right?
churning around
So,
in your head, are they like
well,
comedic elements too?
yep, there's 2 that are actually all written. So
Mhm.
one is called Marika and the Golf Balls.
Mhm.
It's the story of my 3 youngest siblings who disappeared one day completely. Mom couldn't
Is there
find
some
them.
reality in that?
Oh, absolutely. They disappeared. They disappeared. We went looking all over the neighborhood for them for hours. When we got home, they were sitting on the front stoop. They had been retrieving golf balls that had fallen into the creek in
Mhm.
that separated our property from the golf course. And of course, the golf club manager didn't like that, so he put them to work. But it was the 70s. There were no cell phones. He didn't let them
Yeah.
use a phone to tell them where they were. So my mom had words.
Mhm.
And she managed to, again, triumph over this whole thing and put him in his place, tell him he shouldn't do it. And she also
Mhm.
managed to come out with something great for the kids. So it worked out. So that's one. There's another one called Marika and the Moose. Also, it's an amalgam of things that happened to my mom. So again, I told you she was very independent. My dad could not, after driving us to Winnipeg to see our relatives, could not drive us back, and we were dragging a tent trailer and we had to get to school. So my mom took the tent trailer over Lake Superior, the Canadian route, back to Toronto in time for school. My mother could not back up the tent trailer, right? She had to go into places where you could drive in and drive out. That is a story point in here. And she had a couple of close calls, including one with a moose. And there's a lot of other characters in it who helped make this a happy story for everyone, including the moose.
So many of those things I can relate to. Retrieving the golf balls out of the
Yeah,
creek or the river, or the
yeah.
backing up of the tent trailer. Oh,
And that's the whole idea. I'm
yeah.
looking for stories that actually would have
Mhm.
happened to people in that era that they can relate to and smile. And they're adult stories, right? They're the
Yeah.
kinds of stories that exist in your memory because they happened to you when you were an adult.
Huh. Have you thought about going to seniors to ask about
Get
try to
to mine their stories.
exactly because they would
Um,
have a ton of them.
I haven't yet because I've
Mm-hmm.
got lots of my own, but I
Mm-hmm.
have had, well, for instance, when the men said, "Well, what about a story for us?" That twigged me right away. Oh, I've got to do
Yeah.
that. Um, I think it's a good idea, actually. Like right now, I'm sort of very focused on getting this one out, but I do spend a lot of time in my mom's long-term care home every
Mm-hmm.
week. couple times a week. And so you get to know the people that, are around them. And I think I will start talking to some of them and say, so what do these remind you of what happened to you? Because that's excellent. I mean, these are the source of our stories, right? My mother told me these stories. Those people told their other children stories. It's a really good point. Yes.
Well, I welcome you, Helen, to come on down to Unison at Kirby Center anytime. We've got lots of great
Wonderful.
stories happening here.
If
Yeah.
I was in Calgary longer this trip, I definitely would. That's a wonderful invitation. Thank you.
All right. And when can we expect to see those other books?
Well, again, if I have to put them out and I have to, expend the money to print them, that's the most expensive
Hmm.
cost, right? The printing of them. It'll be another year or so. I'm hoping that the success we're having with this book will engage a traditional publisher who, then they can pay for not only the illustrations but the printing, and that they can put a couple out. So from your lips to God's ears, I hope it happens. We are only a month into promoting this book. The book came out May 1st officially, so a little bit more than a month. I think it's extraordinary the reaction I've had because I wasn't sure. I
Mhm.
thought it was a good idea,
Yeah.
but the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. So I am hoping that it makes its way to people's ears who have that ability to say, yes, we would like to order 2 more books from you.
Well, thank you for putting, as they say, pen to paper and coming up with this, and taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really honored. I
Okay.
hope it helps people. I hope it's something that they can take in as a gift when they go to see someone with dementia, and that
Mhm.
it means that they don't say, oh, I can't go because I just don't know what to say, because that's a real issue too.
It is. Yeah, you run out of stuff to say
Yeah.
pretty quick, and you don't want to just talk about how depressing the news is. So,
Well, no,
so
the very last thing they want to hear.